In the newest patch of World of Warcraft, for the first time ever, Horde and Alliance players can team up to do dungeons and raids. Now despite this, over the game's history, members of the opposing factions have teamed up hundreds of times. And there's one particular event of Horde and Alliance members joining forces that is barely ever talked about, and it's in an ancient Warcraft book written by Chris Metzen called Of Blood and Honor. The story we're going to talk about today involves the noble paladin named Tirion and the honorable orc named Eitrig, and how the brotherly bond they developed with one another was one of the first ever instances of Horde and Alliance teaming up. So when I say this book is old, I mean it. It came out 21 years ago, before Warcraft 3 even came out. Also, really quickly, in this book, Eitrig is green, but in later iterations of his character, he's kind of gray, so just for consistency, let's just say that he is gray in the book. Okay, look, when your universe goes on for this long, some stuff kind of just falls through the cracks, okay? So timeline-wise, this book is set between Warcraft 2 and Warcraft 3. Years have passed since the Second War has ended, and the humans are rebuilding after a devastating conflict. The once enraged savage orcs have been thrown into internment camps after their defeat. Tirion is the governor of the settlement of Hearthglen in the Kingdom of Lordaeron. The paladin was a skilled ruler and never let his town's defenses falter during the war. Although, as of late, there are rumors from various human kingdoms that the orc forces are on the move once again. Tirion mounted on his hardened warhorse named Mirador and patrolled around his settlement to see if he could find any suspicious activity. Tirion had found an abandoned guard tower. On closer investigation, it seemed like someone or something had been living there. He'd need to return to Hearthglen to report his findings to the rest of the kingdom before—
Hey! My blades will rend your flesh!
Tirion had slashed the orc's thigh, crippling him for a moment. The paladin could have dishonorably butchered the orc right then and there, but that would be against his paladin code. If he was to win, it would be a good, fair fight.
Oh, that was a mistake.
Fantastic!
Tirion had woken up in his own bed. His wife, Karandra, had told him that he just appeared at the gates of Hearthglen, unconscious, bloody and bruised, and tied up to his own horse. That was 4 days ago, and Tirion had just now regained his consciousness. The paladin put two and two together, and realized that strange orc had saved his life. Murmurs and rumors spread across the town of Hearthglen. The only thing that could have gravely wounded their lord like that must have been an orc. Perhaps a whole warband of them had breached into their lands. The two previous wars they had with the Greenskins had put them on edge, and some protested that they should be proactive and send out hunting parties this instant. But Tirion was their ruler, and ordered that no such thing would happen. It was just one singular orc, and that was all he saw. He would figure out what to do with it as he saw fit. In the early morning hours of the next day, Tirion mounted back up on his horse with his warhammer and snuck out of his keep to investigate the abandoned guard tower and that strange orc once again.
Hello. man, dog, you know, it's like I'm feeling you, but I'm not feeling you, you know?
The two warriors sat within the tower that was once their battleground. The orc introduced himself as Eitrig. He lived alone in these lands, a deserter of the Horde. He left the bloodthirsty warband after his sons were sent into an unwinnable battle by a dishonorable chieftain who only seeked good standing within the Horde rather than seeing his people prosper. You see, the orcs had long forgotten the way their ancestors lived. They once lived by an honorable code, maintained relative peace, and worshipped their ancestors. Tirion thought to himself, and maybe perhaps the orcs and humans were much more similar than he was led on to believe. But the perversion of warlocks and the drinking of demon blood made them forsake their honorable ways, and the only type of orcs the humans knew were these bloodthirsty green monsters they had become. After years of pointless war, Eitrig just wanted to live the rest of his days in peaceful solitude. As Lord of Hearthglen, Tirion vowed that he would make sure that no harm came to the peaceful orc ever again. By his paladin code, he would ensure this promise. The two warriors saluted each other once again, and Tirion traveled back to Hearthglen. But little did he know, maintaining peace would not be so easy. "What the f*** are you doing, Tirion?" To the paladin's surprise, his superior, Saidan Dathrohan, had arrived. He was on high alert of orcish activity because recently, an orc named Thrall had led an uprising at one of the prisoner camps, so he traveled over to Hearthglen to investigate this strange activity. The people within the town were already suspicious of Tirion, since he had that run-in with the orc, and then he just sneaked out in the early hours of the morning a couple days later. You know, perhaps he was colluding with the enemy. Saidan Dathrohan demanded that Tirion show him where this orc was. He was at an impasse. Tirion vowed to keep Eitrig safe, but he could also not deny an order from his paladin superior. So, with a heavy heart, Tirion agreed, led Saidan and his men to the guard tower where his new friend stayed. Obviously, Saidan and his men were not there to shake hands with Eitrig. He was imprisoned and would later be tortured for questioning. Any information they could get on the rogue orcs in the area would be critical. Tirion was enraged. This unknowing betrayal against Eitrig went against everything a paladin stood for. He needed to save his new friend for the sake of his own honor. Tirion was thrown in a cell for his treachery. Why on earth would he be trying to help a beast such as this? He would later be escorted to Strathhome, where he would stand on trial for his betrayal to the Alliance. Tirion stood alone at his trial. His judge was Uther the Lightbringer, the supreme commander of the Paladin Order. The jury was Dalen Proudmoore, Archmage Antonidas, Archbishop Alonsus Fowl, and Arthas Menethil. Tirion explained the reasoning for his actions, that Eitrig was one of the most honorable opponents he had ever met, how he is different from the orcs they had fought in the past two wars. He also explained his promise to Eitrig, and how if he turned his back on his word, he would betray his honor as a paladin.
Yeah, he's guilty.
Uther and the jury really didn't care about all that because at the end of the day, Tirion was still colluding with the enemy. But they gave him a chance to repent and receive a full pardon if he condemned his traitor's actions. Tirion took a moment to consider, but he promised that he would forever be a soldier of the Alliance, but to disavow his oath to Eitrig, it would go against everything he stood for. With a heavy sigh, Uther did what he had to do, and declared Tirion excommunicated from the Knights of the Silver Hand. With the wave of his hand, Uther drained the holy magic from Tirion, filling his banished heart with despair. And yeah, I guess paladins can just do that? I'm pretty sure this is the only instance in the lore where the light has been stripped from somebody like this. But anyways, all of Tyrion's titles, property, and really all of his belongings would be stripped from him. He would live the rest of his days exiled from his kingdom, forced to survive in the wilderness, alone, and without mercy. Later, Tirion went to visit his wife Cassandra, who disavowed his decision. She now had to raise their son Talion alone in Hearthglen, all because of Tyrion's stubbornness to protect his honor. The excommunicated paladin stepped out into the wilds, stripped of his belongings, abandoned by his loved ones, and nothing but a hammer on his back. He had lost everything. Now he needed to make his honor right. Tirion had picked some impeccable timing to rescue Eitrigg from his execution because Thrall and his liberated band of orcs were currently pushing an assault on Stratholme. With the guards distracted, it allowed Tirion to sneak out of the city and into the forest to tend to Eitrigg's wounds. Tirion inspected the orc's body. To realize he wasn't even breathing, Paladin got on one knee, begging the light to answer him.
Light, grant me one final blessing. Give me the strength to shatter these bonds.
The powers of the light was not something that could be stripped from him. It came from within. He had sacrificed everything to maintain the values of a light-imbued paladin. And it is with this undying faith he would achieve the impossible.
I thank you.
Tirion had channeled all of his holy power into resurrecting Eitrigg from his untimely death. While resurrection might be a very common thing in-game, lore-wise, this is an incredibly rare event that only happened a small handful of times in the universe's history.
Loktar, friend.
Thrall and his band of orcs introduced themselves. He was the war chief of this new horde that shared similar ideals and respect of honor like they did back on Draenor. They were actually assaulting Stratholme to rescue Eitrigg, who is a legendary warrior they wanted to add to their ranks. Eitrigg agreed to join them, and Tirion turned to leave. But Eitrigg stopped him.
We are both bound by blood and honor, brother. I will not forget you.
And that is where our story ends today. But you might be wondering, did Tirion and Eitrigg ever cross paths again? Hell no! Across all of WoW's expansions, they never interacted once. Tirion did interact with Thrall, but mentioning the first time they ever met never happened. But it's not like this book never happened. In classic WoW, Tirion is still exiled and hanging out in the Plaguelands. He would later form the Argent Crusade and play a huge role in defeating the Lich King, and then he died at the start of Legion. But maybe we can go into more detail on those events at a later time. As for Eitrigg, he was an extremely minor character until he got a little bit of screen time in Mist Pandaria, and a bit more screen time in the Battle for Azeroth expansion, where he was the leader of the Stromgarde Warfront, where he says things like,
You can choke on your retribution, Tirion! Horde, to battle! Crush those cowardly castle dwellers before they breach our gates!
So yeah, he's not so peaceful these days, it seems. But that doesn't stop this short story from being a neat little gem in Warcraft history. You gotta realize, this book came out before Warcraft 3, the game where Warcraft really started to form its own identity. So this book of Blood and Honor is a neat little time capsule of when this universe was coming into its own, and is one of the first times peace was ever established in this world of Warcraft.